Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in yet again. Once again, I have been super busy plugging away at flight school. We're midterm, halfway through the semester. So I'm really looking forward to getting commercially licensed this semester. It will for sure be happening. So, with that being said, I put out a poll on my Instagram account about a month ago probably, asking what my next topic should be. And with that being said, a month ago, I had so much come up, but I really wanted to touch on aviation safety. I've done a podcast kind of like this before, but within the recent weeks, I have noticed that there has been an increase, seemingly, of aviation accidents, both helicopter and both airplane. So I really wanted to touch on a few things. Number one being lasers. So there hasn't been anything in the news recently about lasers. However, about 2 weeks ago, the FAA published a little fact sheet thing. I don't know even what you'd call it, but they posted that they have noticed that the reports of lasers at aircraft have gone up. So I kind of want to touch on this and why it's such a huge deal if you point a laser at an aircraft. And first and foremost, I'm going to start off by saying do not ever do it. So, let me start off with a little bit of a story. So, I'm a private pilot with an instrument rating. I am almost at 200 flight hours, and here we go. So, last semester I was flying a commercial cross-country, well, not like commercial, but I was flying a cross-country for my commercial hours up to Salt Lake International Airport from my home base, which is down in southern Utah. And I could not believe it. I had always thought that pilots made things up. You know, it's like you go on the internet and you read, like, this sailor saw a huge shark in the ocean. Or the ones where they talked about rogue waves. Fun fact, there was a lot of tales and myths and like mythical legends about what they call rogue waves, which is essentially a wave that just randomly comes that's much bigger than the other waves. So basically, these sailors were telling these stories and saying, hey, we caught a 100-foot wave out in the ocean. We caught, waves were only 30 feet, but we caught 75-foot wave. So, it wasn't until later where scientists were able to piece and put together information, and these waves were actually documented on camera. So, you went from a group of unbelieving individuals to a group of completely believing individuals. And I had a very similar experience. So, last semester I was taking this cross country. It was super fun, super enjoyable. I went VFR in the middle of the night, so it was around 2, 3 in the morning. I was coming back, and all of a sudden I got blinded by a green light. It was a laser. I did everything I could. I did the process of, reporting and figuring all of that out. But anyways, so my point is I had been blinded at 3 in the morning by a laser. I was flying on autopilot, and they had just shined it directly into my eyes. So, I went from an unbelieving pilot saying, hey, pilots just make that up. Pilots, they're just saying that to, make things up. Maybe they were seeing something, but no. Honey, it happens. And it happened to me. So I went from an unbeliever to a believer in just a matter of 2 seconds. So let's kind of break down what happens when you shine a laser in a pilot's eye, or anyone, even driving a car. So for one thing, let's make note that it's a huge distractor, right? We are trying to maintain optimal situational awareness, and the second that situational awareness gets blocked, or if a pilot gets distracted, that could cause a life or death situation. Now, take for example a more inexperienced pilot. You have a more inexperienced pilot who is just private pilot. They're going out for a joyride at, 9 p.m., right? And someone shines a laser at them. They may not know what to do, and they may get spatially disoriented, which leads us to confusion. You don't know where you're at, especially if the aircraft doesn't have autopilot, and the pilot is not really keen or up to date on reading their instruments. They're not instrument rated, so they kind of have a lack of knowledge on what to do. So that's when my instrument rating came in handy, because I was able to immediately jump to the conclusion of, oh no, I cannot look outside because I can't see anything. So I'm going to look inside at my instruments and maintain straight and level flight. So that's the first reason why you never, ever, ever want to shine it at a pilot. The other reason is commercial airlines. Now, that very day, air traffic control was warning everybody in the area that somebody had shined a laser into the cockpit of a fully loaded passenger aircraft on final. This is a huge deal, because not only are they posing a threat to the pilot, but now they're posing a threat to the aircraft, the passengers. They're also posing threats to maybe houses and buildings and anything that's around it, even the airport itself, right? So those who don't think about this, they may find it fun and funny in the moment, but those who don't think about this, they don't realize that they're putting thousands, if not possibly hundreds of thousands, millions of lives at risk. Sure, pilots are on autopilot, and I know that's a bad excuse that some people use. However, you don't realize that they aren't on autopilot all of the time. When they are short final, no autopilot. When they are taking off, no autopilot. When they reach the MDA/DADH, no autopilot. When they are climbing, chances are no autopilot. So anywhere within those critical phases of flight, and I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe the airlines say critical phase of flight ends at 10,000 feet and begins at 10,000 feet on descent. So don't quote me 100% on that. I could be wrong, but that's just what I've heard. So anytime someone ends up shining a laser at an aircraft, it's typically always going to be in a critical phase of flight. And the word critical means what it means. Dangerous. Scary. Where the most things can go wrong. And I myself was not in a critical phase of flight, thank goodness. According to airlines I was, because I was below 10,000 feet. However, I was not taking off or landing or on a takeoff roll or on a landing roll. However, that is no excuse to shine a laser at anyone. Now, the other reason is because of the eyes. Now, this one I thought was interesting when I started to, get into aviation, and my first semester we learned about how weird it is to fly at night. So your eyes kind of have two components to them. Your eyes have rods and your eyes have cones. Cones help you see during the day, and that's what gives you the detail, all of the pretty sight picture. Now, rods are more for night and a little bit of your peripheral vision. So, with that being said, at night, you're solely relying on rods. And there's a chemical found within your eye called rhodopsin. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's rhodopsin. And rhodopsin is the chemical that helps you gain what we call night vision, so to speak. And that night vision is detrimental to pilot safety and pilot success. So, typically, rhodopsin takes around 30 minutes to kind of develop. So let's say you're walking out on the ramp and someone turns on their strobes. It's happened to me plenty of times and it's my favorite thing in the world. But they turn on their strobes and you're looking over in that direction and you get blinded. So it's going to take another 30 minutes for that rhodopsin to kick in and fully develop again before you can actually, see correctly. You basically have full range of vision again. So you can imagine that you get what's the word for that? You can imagine that someone shines a laser at you, your short final. You don't have 30 minutes to allow your eyes to adjust again. You either have to land the plane or go around. Ideally, go around. I would have gone around if that was my case. But it's key that no one shines lasers at anyone, moving or standing or anything. So that's really just kind of like my plug-in with lasers, but the FAA has noticed that there has been an influx, and I don't know if it's just because people are bored, but I kind of think it's pretty crazy. I mean, I have experienced it myself. I mentioned this in another video talking about like weirdest flight experiences or something, and I got some concern from it. I got a lot of concern from it, but I got it all handled, got it all taken care of with people, with my instructor, with everything. But I really just wanted to bring up this point, not to get after people. In fact, that's the last thing I want to do, right? Is yell at people. And I'm not yelling, I'm not, getting mad. I just want to raise awareness for something that's so important and that can cause so much damage. Because in turn, if you think about it, aviation is already dangerous. It is so sad, but the amount of lives that have been lost within this past week. People who we know, people who I don't know, it's been unbelievable. It's heartbreaking. And the last thing I want is for someone else to experience that, right? So I'm really just making this to raise awareness and say, hey, this is what happens. This is the possible outcome. And this is why. Because I feel like a lot of times people don't really understand something until they know that specific why. I know I didn't understand why planes flew until I understood the why. Someone could explain lift to me. They'd be like, okay, you have Newton's law, you have Bernoulli's principle, you have the Coanda effect, pressure gradient force, But, they can explain that to me, but then I always go back to why. And so when we understand the why, it becomes a little bit more clear and compatible with our minds. So then we're able to understand and realize that, hey, no one should be doing that. No one should ever be doing that. So that being said, I have been reading a lot into aviation accident incident reports. And it is really heartbreaking. And, me as a pilot, I try to stay as safe and as humble as I possibly can. Because that is the way to succeed. Sure, like, we can get a little bit arrogant, and I have to admit that I do sometimes, but the thing is we need to understand that it can happen to me. It can happen to you. It's just a matter of if not, but when. And none of these accidents or incidences scare me away from flying. In fact, it makes me a little bit more intrigued with flying, because in the long run, us as pilots, we have so much on our shoulders, and we have so much that's weighing us down, and so many decisions. You know, especially if you're a part of a single pilot operation, you have even more decisions. Or a captain of a major airline, or just a passenger jet in general, you have the decision on your shoulder. So, decision making is key. As pilots, we are definitely trained to combat certain situations, to handle emergencies, keep people safe, stay within the regulations, you know, but sometimes there's just that one thing that happens, and it's just a matter of seconds before, you know, you do crash. I hope that I never have to experience that, or anybody else, but it's just very, very interesting to read these cases that have come up within the past few weeks. You know, airplanes, helicopters, it happens to us all. I mean, I'm sure there's definitely been glider accidents, there's probably been airships, you know, balloons, but I just really want to raise awareness concerning safety. One of the biggest steps to kind of mitigate this is adequate pre-flight. Whether that's, you know, the PAVE acronym, Pilot, Aircraft, Environment, and External Pressures. You know, and you're gonna have external pressures as a pilot, but what matters is how you deal with them. And I just recently had an experience with this. I was behind in my flight lab, and I'm all caught up now. Everything's fine and dandy, but I was behind last week, so I needed like a 1.4 to catch up to everybody else. And the weather was bad, but it kind of cleared for a minute, and I went, okay, maybe I can do this. But the TAF came out with a temporary that said that it was going to turn bad around 3 o'clock, which was about little less than halfway through my flight. And that was kind of a concern, so I just decided, well, I'm going to kind of wait it out a little bit. And I just got this kind of sick feeling going, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this. I asked 4 or 5 different instructors what they thought, and I came to my final conclusion that no matter what they were going to say, I was just going to call the flight off. And I did, and 5 minutes later, it turned into low ceilings of about like 400 feet AGL, I think, and the visibility was like a quarter statute mile. So it always listen to that feeling. If the feeling's bad, don't go. If the feeling's okay, then don't go. If the feeling's good, then go. If the feeling's great, then go. But it all depends on your personal minimums, right? And that's why we're really taught to pursue those personal minimums. You know, write them down. Have a copy with them in your flight bag. Have a copy with them in your airplane. And so you're always reminded, these are my minimums. This is who I am. This is what I can do. This is what I can't do. And so it's really important to do that pre-flight check. You know, check the weather 5 hours before. Check the weather 4, 3, 2, 1 hour before. And then check the weather 30 minutes. And then right before you get in the plane, you know, you start your pre-flight 15 minutes before your flight. check the weather again. Get in your plane, check the weather again. Right before you take off, check the weather again. And so it's just all about kind of building that mental picture and building that confidence, but while maintaining legal and safe boundaries. Because just because a law says something doesn't mean you should be really comfortable with it. Like, just because it says, hey, you should file an alternate on an instrument flight plan, if an hour before, an hour after, ceilings are 2,000 feet and visibility is 3 statute miles. Okay, either way, me personally, I'm filing an alternate. And I can argue that all day. But, still, in the long run, it's better to be safe than sorry. So, adequate pre-flight. Make sure that you check everything. It's really important to build the understanding of what could go wrong. And pilots, we have to mitigate and accept a lot of risk, which really, really does suck. And it really does hurt. It can be hard. You think, hey, it'll be okay, but it's not. You just never know. The outcome of life is you don't know when you're going to heaven. No one does. And it really does suck. But us as pilots, we can try our best to make the right choices, stay on the right track, trust our instruments, maintaining currency, maintaining proficiency. We can do the best we can, but sometimes fluke accidents happen. And that kind of feels like what the majority of the accidents have been recently, was just fluke accidents that were not, or accidents which were not meant to, happen. They didn't really have an established cause. But in the long run, we as pilots can do the best we can. Now, once again, I really wanted to do this just to raise awareness, and I'm trying to do better at pre-flight action myself. I'm trying to do better at crew resource management, single pilot resource management. I'm also trying to do better at situational awareness, pre-flight planning, memorizing emergency procedures, and so I'm right here with you all. I am trying my best to improve each and every day, because that's the best thing we can do. Do a debrief on what happened, what went wrong, what could have gone better, what did go good, what went well, So we all strive to be the best we can be, but in the end, let's bond together as a community and keep trying our best, because I believe in us. I believe we can make this industry a lot safer and a lot happier and healthier. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. I know it was kind of like a more down in the dumps kind of podcast today, but I really, really just want to raise awareness and explain what I'm doing. I'm working hard every day to improve myself as a pilot and as a human being. I'm trying to be decent every day, and I'm trying to be a good, great pilot. There's always room for improvement. We can all do this. Let's all bind together as a community, help each other out, give a pilot a pat on the back. That's really important. Pat your pilots on the back and keep them close, because you never know. You never ever know. But thank you so much for listening. I will be publishing another one of these here soon. And stay safe, and most of all, fly safe. Make good decisions. Let's improve together.